Welcome to our podcast. Me and Sarah talked about doing a podcast for search theory, and we've named it What's the Theory? And today we're going to be talking about what's the theory behind Brighton SEO, because I've just recently attended and come back, and I've done a video which you can go watch now. It will be out now, which was a little vlog on sort of what I was getting on around about Brighton SEO. I wouldn't say it's like the most interesting thing, but it's just a cool behind the scenes of like, if you've never been before, here's like a little taster of what Brighton SEO is. Sarah, you couldn't go, unfortunately, which everyone was gutted about. We really wanted you there, but I know you had prior commitments at home and stuff. So I know you've read through a lot of the decks, or some of the best decks, should I say, that have been highlighted from Brighton SEO. But I guess I'll kick things off with, perspective of someone who attended some of the talks. And I've not, full disclosure, I didn't attend every talk. It's impossible for you to do that. There's like hundreds of them. But I'm aware of some of the best ones, some of the key takeaways, and just generally like the narrative of what was being driven at Brighton SEO, because I think what you tend to find with every single event since I've been going for like the past 7 years is that everyone sings from the sort of same hymn sheet, or people follow the herd and the trend a lot, and then next year it's completely different. So I'll give you that perspective. Last year at Brighton SEO, it was all, I don't know if anyone's seen that, like, or if you've seen it, Sarah, that Microsoft meme where people edited it, every AI word they said, it's like AI. But last year it was like that, and it was like, if you're not doing AI, then next year you're going to be completely irrelevant. Google's going to change to completely as Gemini, and no one's going to click on any website. And it was all doom and gloom. And it was like, search engines are not going to exist anymore. You need to optimize for LLMs. And I think from that event last year where people talked about AI search and how it's all going to kill us all and take our jobs and all whatnot, I think people between then and this Brighton SEO invented the term GEO to sell it into the market, because, scared salespeople will do one thing: they'll invent something new to sell. They'll find something new to sell. And I think what I've at least been very clear on my thoughts on GEO and how its creation is just to confuse the market, to sell something that doesn't realistically exist, and to confuse people, again, to just push sales. And we saw this years and years ago in link building, and that's why we've got massive link building farms at the moment, where these companies are making hundreds of millions of pounds and dollars selling these pretty much arguably useless links. So that I think between last year and then, that's happened. But this year something like shift quite a bit. Like, yes, people talked about AI and GEO, and I think if you looked at the exhibitors list, 90% of the companies were link building companies, or GEO or AI search experts. But a lot of the talkers, I noticed this started to shift from talking about, it's all doom and gloom and AI search and you've got to try and rank for LLMs, and it shifted to, you can rank for number one on Google and still lose. And they made a very good point of SEO is now more conversational, and it needs to involve other channels like digital PR and paid and Reddit and YouTube and social and TikTok and all these other things. And so a lot of people talked about connecting those dots and not just thinking about, LLMs and clicks necessarily, but being part of more conversations on the internet where people search for things. So that's kind of my takeaway. And I think it's definitely headed in the right direction, but there obviously still was a lot of talks of that are a little bit far-fetched, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I wasn't there, obviously, again, but kind of based on what you've told me and like the guys have told me and what I've generally seen going through the decks, and I spent a long few hours going through all of them just to see what the main themes were, I was kind of surprised that it's basically, we're saying we're going back to Google as it was when it first started 20 something, however many years ago it was now. And it was just kind of like, we're going back to the bare bones basics that people had to do when there was poor, awful algorithms that could barely understand things, and websites, still ran on the hideous GIFs and Comic Sans. And it was just like, you basically had to be very explanatory. And every search back then was, I want to find jeans in this size and in this color, and I live here. How do I do that? And it was just kind of like all the decks that I went through. Everybody was saying the same thing. Oh, you need to, like, basically what you said, you need to be more conversational. You need to be more explanatory. You need to be this and that. And it's essentially what Reddit is as well. Like, genuinely, if you go on Reddit, all the things are really long-winded. I have this horrendous problem. What do I do with it? Or I have to make a decision between these 3 products. What do I choose? And then you have all your threads on it. So it's just kind of, it made me laugh that we've gone full circle and we're back to essentially what Google was decades ago, or just LLMs or anything, because it's honestly, it's like the circle of Google's life and we're back at square one, except now everyone's pushing the links, which I thought was very interesting. They're pushing links because realistically, would an LLM go on mummy blogs and directories to find a ton of links and find citations? I don't think it would. So what's the point of buying all these expensive links with crappy DAs and zero relevance? Like, what is the point of having, say, search theory on some random mummy blog or on some directory if that isn't what LLMs aren't going to, they're not going to crawl that. Like, they're not going to look for citations there. Why would they? That's stupid. They've got only a certain amount of budget to crawl so many websites. We all know environmentally, and I saw someone did actually a deck on it, environmentally, AI not the best. So it's like, it's not going to waste its crawl budget on things like that, is it? So it's interesting that you're saying, and you're not the first person to say it to me, there was a ton of link builders there pushing link building instead of like actual relevant campaigns, which is scary and shocking and an embarrassment to our industry. In my opinion.
And it was sold differently as well. It was like rank in LLMs. Like usually when you see link building companies, and I've seen many of them at exhibitions before, it's like rank number 1 in Google or like improve your authority. The narrative now is build these links to rank in LLMs. So they're playing on I think they're preying on the biggest weaknesses of businesses, which is they've got this huge problem at board level at the moment where they're being asked, everyone's talking about LLMs, are we showing up? When I ChatGPT'd or like the best shorts products on ChatGPT last night, our brand didn't come up, and marketers are being challenged with like this huge problem and everyone's looking for a quick fix.
But the thing is this, is it a huge problem? Because I've been doing a bit of research. I mean, obviously the numbers keep changing, but they are still fairly the same. So I did a bit of digging into it again, and realistically Google still owns 90% of the market share, like literal Google search, not Gemini, not AI mode, any of that, although they're pushing it very hard, don't get me wrong, but 90% is still Google. Bing still has more of the market share than ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or Claude or any of them. And obviously you've got all these privacy leaks that are currently going on around Claude, OpenAI and all of that, which has massively hit their market share, and loads of people are like removing the desktop apps for ChatGPT and all that stuff because it's breaching some horrendous privacy laws. So it's like, is it actually a problem? Like, the no-click thing is a real problem. I think that's a big issue, but I think that's because Google's changed it, that the first, as far as you can scroll, you're just seeing a ton of sponsored ads. It's really pushing paid more than anything. And I think that's a bigger problem than LLMs, and everyone's ignoring it.
I think most brand managers, marketing directors, they don't have a conversion problem, because everyone's talking about, oh, well, clicks have dropped and all of that. Well, in theory, right, like, yes, clicks can drop. Does that mean that over the past year that we've seen a 50% decline in sales worldwide on all products and services? No, it's not happened. The sales are still happening. They're just happening in different ways. And this isn't, I think I want to be clear on this. I don't think marketers have a conversion problem. I think they have an attribution problem. And we've seen this ourselves, haven't we, Sarah? With like, tracking is difficult with, different platforms, LLMs. Cookies are a pain in the ass. And
consent mode.
And so I think there's a huge attribution problem at the moment where we're looking at our analytics accounts, and naturally we're seeing, big declines year on year just because the traffic isn't being attributed correctly, or no one's clicking on the website and is being recommended through Reddit or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. Because Google's AI mode is quite prominent in some searches, but not all of them, actually, funnily enough. There was some data on that shared at Brighton SEO that for a lot of product categories that AI mode doesn't actually come up. But anyway, I digress. But I think there is a huge attribution model at the moment, and I think that is people are panicking and trying to think, well, how can I get this graph that is probably missing a ton of data to increase? And the answer to that is GEO and links. Like, what would if I was in that position, like what would you say to me, Sarah? Like, based on the conversations you've had as well.
I mean, interestingly enough, it's like you said, it's not an issue with your brand's doing something wrong. Like, you could be ranking beautifully and still seeing these downturns. And year on year, I wouldn't even say they're that huge. Like, yes, maybe about a 30% drop, let's say. What I'm noticing is Google's changing, like you said, they're tracking a lot, and isn't actually properly documenting what they're doing or giving any advice on it. We literally had an issue recently with a client where it turns out that their tracking was massively wonk purely because they still had the old UA code on the website, and it was just messing up tracking, and loads of organic traffic was being attributed to direct. And it was like, no one could figure it out. It's been months of mess. It was a massive issue. Like, consent mode already took 30% of traffic away because you're not allowed to know who came to your website because illegal data, even if it's anonymous, that's already done a massive slap. And then it turns out, after all this checking, it was UA mode. Basically, you forgot to remove your old analytics code before you changed to GA4. And it's caused all this mess. And the minute we took the UA code out, magically, organic traffic is back up again. And it's just like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that people are doing around. We need to do sales. We need to change. I don't know. We need to do geo. Like you said, we need to start buying links. We need to do, I don't know, set up a Reddit, which honestly, yes, there are a lot of industries where Reddit makes sense, but would it make sense to have a Reddit if you're an e-commerce website selling like clothes? Like, who's going to go to Reddit to find out what jeans they want to buy? It's not like, it's the wrong, you're looking at the wrong thing, it's not the right kind of industry, if you will. But when's the last time anyone's done an audit of their GA4, checked whether their tag manager is running? The amount of clients I've seen that have a GA tag that's in their website script, and then a GTM that also has a secondary GA tag in there, basically running analytics twice, and it's causing so many issues because it's not firing tags correctly, it's messing things up, but no one checks it. Like, most marketers would be like, I set it up, it works fine, I think I get it, but they don't audit it. They don't read up on what Google's doing. There's another update they're doing to consent mode in June. So brace yourselves, people, because we might lose another 15% of traffic and no one will know how or why because they never document it properly. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, if you came to me and you said to me, I think I'm doing everything right, but I'm still seeing all these drops, my first question would be, well, is your tracking correct? Like, when's the last time you checked what you're doing with your tracking? And then if your tracking is correct, then fine, you move on to the next things. Like, you question the strategy, you question what you're doing. We saw someone recently who obviously advice these days, and I stand by it, is you need a ton of content. You need long form, informative content. And we recently saw a website that has the most content I've ever seen in my life. Like, I have never,
God.
do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I've never seen that much content in my life. And they rank for absolutely effing nothing. And it's because they've just put, like, you've gone too far. The internal linking, horrendous. The navigation makes no sense. There's no journey there. The bounce rates are crazy. So Google's automatically like, well, this is crap, I don't want it. And it's just like, you can't post a ton of shit on your website and then be like, let's see if it sticks. Because if there's no strategy behind it, if there's no keywords, there's no formatting, for God's sake, people use formatting, like, break up your paragraphs, put a heading in there. If you don't do it, like, you can't just hope for the best. It's a lot. And I think people just don't think about it. Like the basics, like we don't think about the basics.
That's a common problem that I see every time, especially when I've taken on, smaller to medium-sized businesses and even some larger ones, to be fair, like the tracking and the attribution is just all over the place. And I think you'll remember when we worked on a campaign previously with like one of the largest kind of reward companies, I think you would call them, in the UK, and the tracking was just non-existent. Like they couldn't attribute what was coming through paid and I think that is just so crazy to me, because we're investing so much time into, well, how do we rank in LLMs? How do we do this? How do we do that? But none of it's going to matter if you can't go to your board and say, oh, by the way, we've recorded these sales and conversions and they definitely have come from these channels. And you might find that actually you're probably hitting your KPIs in your department, say if you work in, I don't know, the search department, but you're just not tracking things correctly. And I think that's where a big problem is. I think another one is, the whole GEO narrative, and I don't know if we've ever like fully clarified like our stance on this. I know I have on LinkedIn, but I think I'll just say it for the podcast's sake. But GEO is Generative Experience Optimisation, and it's a new term that was coined by God knows who in the past year or so. It's something that's been popping up in a lot of conversations that we've been having, and it's been popping up on LinkedIn and even at Brighton SEO, because obviously this is what the podcast is mainly about.
Yeah.
And, what people claim is that SEOs can quite literally go in and optimize for LLM searches. So if your customers aren't using Google anymore and they're using ChatGPT, you can optimize and show up front of house like first position rankings in LLMs. Now, they say and they claim the way you do this is from link building. So you're getting citations from blogger websites, on Reddit or whatever, because obviously we do know that LLMs, it is factual that LLMs do look at publisher websites and things like that to cite information. And what GEO experts claim is that you need to build a bunch of links, you need to write content with more human intent, which I don't know how you could really define that. So content that speaks more naturally and things like that to be able to rank in LLMs. The problem is, and my stance on it is, right, this was actually brought up in Brighton SEO in one of the guys' presentation, which I thought was absolutely bang on. When we look at Google search and when we look at keywords, right, they tend to be 3 to 9 keywords long. The thing with LLMs, it's a conversational search platform. It's not a typical search query, enter, see result. So people tend to type between 90 and 120 keywords on average, the data shows, on LLMs. Now, if you can tell me as a GEO expert that you can optimize for 120 words with massive variables, instructions, personalized prompts, experiences, and rank number one for every single time for all of your customers in any product category or service category, then I would love to see the evidence on that. The fact is that it's a load of codswallop, right? Because no one can optimize for that. Like, yes, you could build links in theory. Yes, you could rewrite your content to be more conversational so it reads like you're writing on the page, but it's not going to make a world of difference, because we know from our data analysis that LLMs usually go to reliable sources of information, like your Guardian, say in the UK, for example, like Guardian or the BBC, or someone who's a really trusted publisher. Then, even if you do make it in those publications, who's to say that you're going to show up in a prompt that's 120 words long? So it's a load of rubbish.
Isn't that essentially a really long tail keyword as well? Like, again, like we're just trying to rename things and give it all these new terms. And I think the same as you, I'm very vocal about this. There's no geo. It is just freaking old school SEO. It is going back decades for long tail like a prompt. There's no such thing as a prompt. It's not a freaking prompt. It's a really long tail keyword. Like, I understand that LLMs work slightly differently, but I think it annoys me when people are like, oh, you need to do all these different strategies. Your content's all, it isn't wrong. Like, you can't, like, I don't think you can reasonably, say you're an e-commerce website, you can't reasonably optimize all of your product pages for all these prompts, because you'd have to have a landing page or a product page for every single variable. So I'm searching for size whatever jeans in this color, and I want them in this cut. Like, you can't possibly make a landing page for or like a product page for every single variation. You could, I've seen it done before, but then it messes up your site speed. It messes up the crawl. Like, it just screws up the tech SEO so much that your website is just tanking core web vitals, and then Google doesn't want to rank it. So great, you'll have some traffic from ChatGPT, which, by the way, is still about 3% versus Google's 90%. And then you're missing out on that 90% from Google, which frankly, that's where most people will search for it. So it's like, it's not worth the trade-off, in my opinion. But then if you were strategic about it and applied your SEO brain that most of us should have, all you got to do is do some long form content that has this prompt speak, if we want to call it that, and just have those actual headings. Again, going back to use freaking formatting, put some headings in your content, answer the questions in there where they can get, the LLM will find a heading like, okay, well, that answers my question. And here at the start of this paragraph is the answer. So I'm going to pull that through as a citation, and then just link from that post to the actual product you want to promote, or the actual category you want to promote. Like, it isn't rocket science. It's just SEO as we should have been doing it for years upon years. So it pisses me off when people are like, oh, you got to do geo. It's this brand new thing, LLM TXT files. No, LLM. They don't give a crap. Yes, they don't care. Like, it's not a thing. You just have your bloody robots file, put your sitemap in it, and go on about your day. Ugh.
Even so the theory is that GEO is a thing, and I've argued to the teeth with apparently industry experts on this matter on LinkedIn. I've been, to be quite honest, like, in some cases I've been roasted on it, but then I've seen those very people that roasted me 4, 5, 6 months ago for saying GEO's a load of bullshit, now posting that GEO's bullshit, and it's like, it's insane. But you know what? The myth can be completely busted, right? Because Danny O'Sullivan, who is one of the director of searches at Google, I think he's ex-Google now, he said in his very own words, and these people tell you what's actually going on at Google.
Yeah.
Good GEO is just good SEO. Like, it's not a new thing. It's not an exclusive thing. If you want to show up in LLMs, even though I think you're trying to solve a very small problem there.
Yeah.
You need great content, like you've said. You need to, if you're doing digital PR and things like that with good publications, that obviously helps you get cited. And that's what good SEOs have done for many years now. Like, that's what we do. We do digital PR for really top publications to generate demand. We write good content. We do good technical SEO. We don't need a robot text file for fucking AI. That's ridiculous. No, but it is. So I think that's just, it really annoys me when I see it, and it frustrates me more than I think it should.
But it's like, it's a real frustration. I think there was one deck I saw. I'll have to remember what the name of it was, but basically someone touched upon the fact that, people are using AI for everything, but you've got all these hallucinations as well. And she used an example of someone asking AI, I think it was ChatGPT specifically, to do a technical audit of their website and tell them what to fix on the website.
I saw
and it gave
that,
and it gave, like, the advice was so bonkers wrong. It was completely off. Like, it was just full of hallucinations. And it's just like, it's like it was in the news last year that you had these people that went on a walk somewhere, asked ChatGPT about tides. It gave them the wrong answer, and then they got freaking beached somewhere because the tide came up at the different time, and they had to be rescued. And it's like,
oh my god.
And it's just, it's a perfect example of, ask it for simple, like, ask it for a margarita recipe, and even then I can't guarantee it'll be right. But don't ask it to do things that are, there's so much conflicting advice on tech SEO, so much conflicting, you don't know where it's pulling it from. And these days, the one thing I will say LLMs are great at it bypasses the pain that all digital PR experts have, which is you do all this great work, you get mentioned in the publication that you reached out to, and they don't link back to you. And everyone hates the lack of links. Like, it's so painful because you've done all this work, you see the mention, but you don't get the link back. Whereas I will agree, LLMs are great at bypassing that, because you being cited there could still get you, the LLM will follow that breadcrumb, if you will, and might actually cite you for that specific thing and give you the link. So great at that. Like, can't knock LLMs there. But again, we're going back to, it's a 3% thing versus the 90. You know, like Bing has more traffic than an LLM do, you know, LLMs do. And then let's not forget, like, audiences. If you're selling, I don't know, what's something that like older people would buy? I can't even think of anything, but I don't know. Patio furniture. I mean, everyone buys patio furniture, but say, you know, you're looking for some good deals on garden furniture.
Netball.
Like, yeah, netball, whatever it might be. Like, I don't see, my dad's fascinated with it, but he only uses it to ask stupid questions because he wants to test it.
Yeah.
When he's actually looking for, say, garden furniture or whatever it might be he's looking for as a 70-year-old man, he is not going to ChatGPT. Like, him being the prime audience for certain things, he is going to be going to Google, because that's what he's used for the last 30 however many years. So I just see younger audiences, you know, maybe this is a problem in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, where the people who grew up on ChatGPT start getting professional jobs and start becoming managers, and you know, they'll be the ones with the money and they can actually afford patio furniture for their first houses. Like, maybe that's a problem then, and we need to be realistic that eventually it might take over Google. But that's why they've got AI mode, and I don't think they track AI mode very well. I can't find good evidence on how they track AI mode and what they attribute it to. So I've not been able to at least see whether someone's come from AI mode or they just use plain old Google. I can't tell. So it's like, I don't know. The audience thing, the link thing, like you said, it just seems like a very small problem, the 3% problem that is so irrelevant versus all the things that you know, marketers should be spending their time on.
You've got to, I think sometimes you've got to take like a subjective view of things and zoom out sometimes and think about like motives in the industry, right? And I do this a lot. And I think, you know, why is everyone pushing this? If I know that, you know, we've worked on campaigns together, you know, I read about SEO, you know, every single day in the Search Journal, other websites. I watch podcasts on it. It's a little bit sad, but yeah, I do a lot of research on it, and I'm very fascinated and curious about, you know, how it works and how it's changing and what people are doing to like rank in different places. And I've come to the conclusion that, look, before all of this, before all of AI mode, you had an entire industry that for the past, I would say 15, 20 years has been, you know, the link building industry. And it's been propped up and supported by SEOs to buy these links to get, you know, a result, I guess.
Yeah.
And over the years, as Google has deprioritized links, and we know that as a fact because the data and statistics show that, they're not completely irrelevant, I'm not going to say that, but they are like 90% less important than they were 10 years ago. Because Google have said themselves, and we've seen the data, that a site with 10 really good links, you know, that's been built through something like digital PR, can outrank a site with 10,000 links that are like really low authority, mummy blogs, things like that.
Yeah.
And I think there has been a shift because these link building farms have understood that the actual attitudes and behaviors in the industry are starting to realize that. And then as soon as AI search, it was the perfect opportunity for them to go, links are a massive thing in AI search. Let's call it GEO. And so I think the motives behind selling this type of service is link builders have rebirthed themselves. And essentially they've gone, we're not bankrupt, guys. We're not going to go out of business. We're just going to change tactics to GEO, right? And Google itself, and I think you know, other search engines have said that the practice of buying links is completely against policy. How they would find out, I have no idea. They probably wouldn't, right? That's just me being honest. But it's not something that they support, and they know that it's it's a dirty tactic because it doesn't help users. Like if you're just manipulating the search results on purpose by buying your way to success. But they've gotten really good recently at stopping that by using the algorithm updates and content updates and things. So I think subjectively that's why it shifted into this like GEO thinking, and why link builders are probably more prominent at this year's Brighton SEO, because they found the golden nugget to dig at, and people are going to buy into it because they're panicking about how to rank in LLMs.
Yeah. I mean, my take on it is John Mueller himself, the god of Google, has said irrelevant. So if it's irrelevant, and I get, I there's a lot of agencies, I've worked for one of them, that are like very against who gives a crap what Google says, because Google doesn't check things, which I guess to an extent may be true. Like that's where your black hat comes in. But they're getting really, really good at making their own AI systems that do actually check these things. The fact that even John Mueller said that they can and they do watermark Gemini answers. So if you're using content that wasn't actually written by you, used AI to write it and you use Gemini, like they watermark their content. They know, and they do actually massively penalize that content further down the line. I think, shout out to Lily Ray. I love her on LinkedIn and all the insights she shares. And she's written so much about this. She's constantly posting about all these websites that are being penalized by it because it's watermarked. ChatGPT also watermarks, and then not only watermarks, it indexes the answers if you share it with anybody. If you use like the share button, it indexes whatever you've put in there so that people can actually find it on Google. So it's like, why toy with it? Why not just use actual real tactics instead of trying to cut corners, hoping to save a few bucks, when further down the line, you'll just lose money, And I think, I know I wasn't at Brighton, but my theory behind Brighton's SEO thinking this year is that you're pushing this thing for geo and link buildings, like you said, which is because they found some sort of area where they think it's a gold mine. But then from what I've seen on the decks, there's quite a few people that were very vocal about the fact, like this tech SEO thing, that there's still hallucinations. The market is small. And actually your problem isn't LLMs. Your problem is, are you actually tracking things correctly? Like, are you looking at the right data? And to me, the theory behind all of it is, well, it all sits in the data. And the data says LLMs aren't actually that worth it yet. And they still use SEO basics. So why are we pushing this whole industry that is just fake?
I think we need to stop letting salespeople control the narrative. And I think this is why search marketers who have been there and done that get an opportunity to speak more and represent themselves a little bit more, because I used to be a BDM at an agency like 9 years ago, right? And I used to sell websites and branding, and you would say anything, you wouldn't cross the line on, malpractice, but you would say anything to get the sale. If someone asked you the question like, oh, well, what if, you do custom built websites, what if I just build it on Squarespace? Oh, well, a custom website is really good because of this, and if you go for Squarespace, it's good. And you know what I mean? You try and convince that, well, this is the better thing and this is the solution, this is actually what you need. And I think over the years, obviously I've ditched those days, but I've come to realize that the best thing to do in the market is just be honest, educate people on what's actually happening in the industry, but most importantly, ask some questions to find out what the real problem is, and then offer a solution. Because most brands don't have an LLM problem. They have, an attribution problem. They're not showing up in enough places. Like you said, 90% of searches are Google, very small percentage of those ChatGPT and AI, which, probably will grow over time. But I like to say to brands all the time, YouTube is like the second fucking largest search engine in the world. Like, most people search for like product reviews and other things on YouTube to validate why they should potentially buy a thing. And I think this is more common for the e-com industry, where you do sell products versus services. But like, let's think about a car. When's the last time, you got to ask yourself, when's the last time you bought a car? I mean, you've just bought one recently, but
yeah, I did.
I can bet my money on it that you watched a video on YouTube.
I watched a few reviews, to see like, what does the car look like? How does it perform? All of that stuff. I did go on Reddit as well. So I went on the lovely forums tab that you now have in Google. So you do all that research. You don't necessarily go straight to the retailer's website. I didn't Google and say, I want this car, and I went straight to their website. Yeah, I went to read what the actual data and like what does the car actually have, like what am I getting with it. But then I went straight to YouTube to be like, is this actually worth it? Like, what have the experts said? So yeah, it's a huge market that people miss out on.
And that's the answer. The answer is that as artificial intelligence does rise, trust signals are going to become lower and lower and lower. Consumers are going to constantly question, and they already are, what's real, what's fake, what's manufactured, what's created. I remember a time when I would read all the top 10 bicycles, you know what I mean, to get from this, and you'd get a list on a magazine of like, this BMX is good for these reasons. I don't trust those anymore, because now I know that people pay for those placements, and so trust is going to continue to go down, and everyone's going to question what's real, what's not. And that means is a behavioral trait. People are going to go to more places to validate what they're going to buy. So they're not, if they're going to buy a service, they're going to look at your website, they're going to search Google, they're going to ask ChatGPT to do a background check on you, they're going to go on YouTube, maybe YouTube, to check for any kind of information around those services and what the recommendations are. They're going to go on LinkedIn and probably look at Neil Patel or whatever, and just do as much research as possible. But that is growing and growing. I think probably 20 years ago you could say, oh well, someone would search something, find it and buy it, because there was a lack of knowledge and information in places where you could find it. But now there is so many places and there's so much distrust in the industry that we're going to find it harder and harder to convert people. And that's why it's important that brands show up in more places more consistently, and most importantly, I think, honestly, don't lie about it.
Oh yeah, transparency is huge. It's obnoxious to see you go to a website and it's all about me. This is what we can do. This is what we can offer you. This is why we're the best. But what are the actual specifics? Like, how do I know that you're the best? Why? There's no, I don't know, there's no reviews. There's no trust signals. There's no information about how you do what you do. Like, I want to know, if I'm coming to you to say buy a car, why should I come to this dealership versus that dealership? What are you going to offer me? What my experience with you going to be different than that dealer down the road? And I think that's so important to talk about. And no one wants to do that. Like, the amount of clients we've had in the past that we've worked on campaigns before where a client just wouldn't want to give out their own freaking data. They'd be like, no, we can't talk about that on a website. We don't want to give it away because we can't give that away because the competitors will see it. And it's like, who cares? Who cares if a competitor sees why you're better than them? Like, who gives a crap? You need to convert people, and you're going to convert more of them if you're honest about your services and what you offer and why you're better. Like, if a competitor sees it, good on them. Let them be scared. Let them go back and try and mimic you, and they might try and mimic you. They will do, but who cares? Because at the end of the day, if you're just as good as them or better, people will know that and they'll still buy from you.
Yeah, spot on. And if like a lot of brands that do hold back on like revealing I guess like what makes them unique or different or what their advantage is, you've got to realize that if people are going to be, your competitors are going to be snooping, they probably don't have the time, energy or resources to copy it anyway. Like, otherwise you wouldn't be snooping. You'd be focusing on your own things and creating your own unique differentiator. But I think overall for the event, I think that's my key takeaway. It's like, behavior is shifting, trust is going down. I don't know what's real in terms of images and video these days. Like, the stuff I'm seeing, man, I think we're heading towards like a lot of heavy regulation, if I'm honest, because I've seen videos of celebrities that it's not actually them. And I think influencers do it on Instagram where they're like, look, I can be anyone I want, and then they switch it and they're like Ariana Grande and they're in front of the camera like doing that, and it looks completely real. And I'm like, this is going to be heavily regulated in the near future, and we've got to be very careful. We've got to focus on how behavior is changing, how trust is changing, And as brands, not how can I optimize for LLMs, how can I manipulate my way into showing up. It's how naturally can you show up in more conversations cross-platform while still doing the fundamentals to get in front of mind for your consumers. And that's the key takeaway for me.
I will add to that. I'm very disappointed in how many people used AI for their presentations. I know this is completely irrelevant, but that is going to be my final note that I will add for this podcast. I'm so disappointed in all you people who used AI for your really ugly presentations because it wasn't needed. You could have easily done your presentations without it. 3,000 gallons
of water was worth it.
Genuinely disappointed. So disappointed.
Yeah, there was one speaker, I won't name them, but I did think they were quite funny, and I think that was the whole point. But she was like erratic on the stage, just crazy, and she'd flown all the way from America, bless her. And she even said, she was like, I've done this entire presentation with AI. I thought it was funny.
Well, fine. At least you're honest about it. I'll give her that. Like, at least you're honest about it. But no, I think, especially after seeing that presentation on the impact of AI on like the environment.
Yeah.
It just, honestly, and I don't say this, I know like I'm airy-fairy with that stuff. Like, we drive electric cars. We're very green in our house, and we care about the environment. My 6-year-old literally asked me this morning, is it true that if you cut trees, you remove oxygen? And I was like, yes, deforestation. So, like, it's a thing that I deeply care about, but it is disappointing to me how many of those professionals, considering, I would say, especially content people, that's a creative industry, and you're making a lot of AI images instead of supporting actual creatives who could have made the images for you, or you could have gotten real photos or real, you know what I mean? Like, we're one creative industry putting another creative industry down by degrading their work with AI images. That is, I know it's irrelevant, but I was disappointed.
No, I think it's a good point, and I noticed it a lot too. And I think one of the main reasons we started Search Theory is because, we're fed up of the industry just degrading itself constantly. With the wake of AI stuff, you've obviously seen huge amounts of like redundancies in big tech firms where they've replaced roles with AI. We're now seeing data come through in terms of stock price and news about those decisions have actually impacted those businesses negatively because the AI they were oversold on AI. And it's like, well, who's surprised, right? And I think I don't know. We wanted to start it to just say, we want to back creative people. We want to back unique thinking, because looking 10 years ahead, and here's me getting my crystal ball out. But if let's say 99%, right? Because it's never 100%. Say 99% of agencies are AI first. They're using AI instead of human skills to create things, not do menial tasks, just create things and do performance work. AI finds the best average of something. So if you're all using this, unless you're creating your own AI, which no one is because no one has the money to do so, you're going to get the best average of something. And so every agency in the 5-10 years is going to look the fucking same. They're going to be producing the same results. They're going to have the same strategy. They're going to have the same marketing, and everyone's going to become boring. And it's the unique companies like Search Theory that are going to stand out because we have backed people, because we understand that humans have unique experiences and insights that AI couldn't even fathom, right? They don't know that I drove down the road the other day and got a nail in my tire, and it was really frustrating because my car didn't have a spare, and that because of that experience I wanted to get a car with a spare tire. Like, those are the things that us as humans have experiences on that influence our behaviors and decisions. And I think that is unique, and one of the reasons why I think like a lot of brands are going to start gravitating towards more human driven marketing and more human driven agencies, because everything's just going to be a best average of something, and it's depressing.
And we don't want that. Our goal is to be above average.
Yeah.
So
way above. And I think also, just like on the points we've talked, add that layer of transparency that's not really in the industry anymore. I mean, we'll be honest with ourselves. Like, we turn down deals because we we can't promise the earth to people. Like, if we just be honest on, like, this is what the data is telling us, this is what our experience tells us, this is what's needed to get a result, and then if you don't have the budget for those results, then unfortunately we can't work together. And we're very honest about that, rather than let's try and sell and manipulate everyone.
Yeah, it's not about that. And I think, to be honest, it's transparency that's missing. Like you said, it's that lack of accountability, lack of being honest, lack of showing data. It's not black magic. Like, what we do is really not that difficult. If you can look at the data, understand the data, anybody could do it. Genuinely, anybody could do it. But people just don't take the time or the care or have the passion to do it. And I think that is what I'm hoping we will bring more to what we do, but also to, to these podcasts, that we can transparently talk about things and share our insights, whether it's my disappointment in AI images at Brighton SEO, or what's happening, in sales and in industry, and just generally in running businesses, our insight into
definitely.
it.
Well, if anyone has any suggestions on theories that you want us to explore, obviously this was our first one, so we wanted to talk about, what's relevant right now, which is Brighton SEO, because we're just fresh from coming from that event. But if you want to challenge us with any theories on search and you want us to debunk any myths, then let us know and comment, and we'll be sure to explore it, right? we'll get, maybe in the next one as well, like if we have some like compelling questions, we'll pull up some data and graphs and other things like that might be helpful.
The Mythbusters of SEO. Well, marketing. I love the Mythbusters.
I've always wanted to be like an Adam Savage. Yeah.
David Savage, that's what you are from now on.
Yeah, Savage.